So about a year and a half ago, we got a new chief over at the Center for Entrepreneurship. He never spent any time in academia, but he bleeds maize and blue about as deep as anybody I know, and he's got a very storied background he's going to tell you about with a lot of insights to offer. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, Eric. Can you hear me? Does this work? Is this plugged in? Anybody? There we go, one person. Thank you very much. Excited to be here. As Eric said, I came to the center just a year ago from the outside, the real world, and very excited to be here. My purpose here and our purpose at the Center for Entrepreneurship is to help you in any way we can along your entrepreneurial journey. Part of what I'm going to do today is hopefully explain why you are actually on an entrepreneurial journey already, whether you think so or not. For those of you who have raised your hand and are down that path, hopefully we'll provide something that will help you think about what it means to be an entrepreneur from the perspective of somebody who's had a 30-year career in doing so. I'm going to spend a little bit talking about me, not a lot, give you some perspective, and then we'll talk about why the entrepreneurial path is an interesting path to choose, and then a special bonus for your tuition money, a guaranteed recipe for entrepreneurial success, and then Eric and I will get into some questions at the end. My journey started here at the university a long time ago. I came here for undergrad with a horse and buggy and ended up staying through grad school for a lot of reasons. At one time I thought I was going to be a professor and very quickly learned that I wanted to be building things that people were using. I was impatient. I wanted to use the technology to drive change in the world. So I ended up starting my first company out of school. Since then, I've been part of 8 startups. I've founded 5 myself. Most of the roles I've played are CEO roles, a couple COOs, and a CTO role. I had the good fortune to have several exits, a couple of 8-figure exits in the 90s, and then a public offering in the 2000s, and a couple other exits after that. A lot of good fortune to work with a lot of really smart people. Raised probably $100 million in venture capital over time from a lot of different folks, angel investors and private equity as well. The last part of my career, I was doing turnarounds, so distressed assets and venture portfolios, so places where there's still thought that there was a good idea and a good team. They weren't going to market the right way, or maybe the product needed to be changed or whatever. So a lot of change management. And then along the way, I've become advisor to several funds. I currently am an advisor to a number of companies and been on various boards, both private companies and nonprofits. So short answer, I've been doing this a long time, got a lot of experience, and I'm really excited to share some of that with you guys and start a conversation. My background is technology entrepreneurship, more specifically software, enterprise systems, selling complex things to complex organizations. My first company, it's the biggest picture in the background, was design software for the automotive industry. Ended up growing that from me writing software in the basement of Huron Towers over there to offices around the world, software in all 35 OEM manufacturers, and sold that successfully in 1998. After that, I went on and joined a company that was doing manufacturing simulation, sold a multi-million-dollar VR system to Ford Motor Company to do vehicle assessment. Got into a search play, because everybody my age has to have at least one search play in their portfolio. And then a number of other things, did some short stint as an interim CEO in a gaming company. And then my last company was a big data company that for healthcare, we ingested about 1 of every 5 Medicare admissions to hospitals around the country and did real-time analytics and a lot of really cool stuff. So anyway, some interesting stuff at scale, all technology-driven entrepreneurship, all venture-backed entrepreneurship, with these little terms that will become more familiar over the course of the semester. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a bit of a stickler for terminology, and I start with what are we talking about? And you hear the word entrepreneurship. What do you think, right? I mean, it's a big, complicated 5-letter word that means a lot of things to a lot of people. Can somebody give me a definition of entrepreneurship, or what it means to be an entrepreneur?
Don't be shy.
How about you in the green right there? I'm going to pick people if you aren't. Yeah, you. Sorry. What?
I guess in my mind, entrepreneurship would be, I would say, coming together with a group of people to build something new that can benefit others.
Good. So coming together with people to build something new. Any other ideas? Yes, ma'am. Making ideas come true. I like it. Anything else? Yeah. Providing solutions to problems. I'm sorry. That you see. Okay, this is great. So you guys are very on board with me. A lot of people talk about entrepreneurship in different terms. This is a very academic definition, but one of my favorites because it doesn't speak to one of the stereotypes is that entrepreneurship is about building companies. Starting a company is probably the canonical example. It's the best, purest example of bringing a new idea to market, working with people to create value in the world. But you can be entrepreneurial in very, lots of different contexts. Our definition of entrepreneur is really what we call a big tent definition. It's about somebody is focused on the creation of value and rallying people and resources to achieve that value. And that can happen in a company, it can happen in a startup. Obviously, as I said, that's an easy, direct example, but it could also happen in a big organization. It could happen in a nonprofit. It could happen at your kid's school. You're taking ownership of a new project. So it's really more, for us, focused on the creation of value and how do you rally resources and convince people, use your skills, your knowledge, your leadership, your enthusiasm to make a difference in the world based on your ideas. So, to that end, at the center, we have this idealized view of what we want you to become as you get out in the world. And whether you know it or not, you are going to need to be entrepreneurial as you engage with the real world. And we want you to be looking for innovative solutions to big problems. We want you to embrace change as opportunity. We want you to manage and persevere through failure. We want you to think of solutions that elevate all stakeholders. And as the leaders in BEST, we're going to lead. We're called to lead, and we want to do that the right way with integrity and humility and in a way that advances all of the objectives for the people involved. But if you talk about entrepreneurship, one of my favorite presentations was by a gentleman named Simon Sinek. Anybody familiar with Simon? Got a lot of great content out there on YouTube and other places. He had a presentation called Start With Why, which turned into this book. I'm not going to go in detail about the book, but if we start with why you would want to be an entrepreneur, the Hollywood picture, the canonical example again is you become an entrepreneur, start a company, and you make a ton of money, right? That is the modern media example of entrepreneurship, right? But the reality of entrepreneurship is the cake is a lie. Everybody get that? Are you Portal players out there? The promise of this wonderful outcome isn't what it's actually about. The reality is that most startups fail. The vast majority of startups fail. The vast majority of new endeavors don't get to the holy ground where everything is rainbows and unicorns. So if that's the case, why do we do that? In fact, the path to success is never a straight line. It's usually quite convoluted. It's a mess. It's hard. Inder Singh, who's one of our alums who presented last year, talked about, every startup has at least 4 near-death experiences. And we'll talk about what that means in a couple of slides, but it's never easy, it's never straightforward, and your outcome is far from assured. So why do we go do this? And I don't want to have a big kumbaya moment and say it's all about the journey, but the reality is it is all about the journey, and that's that set of experiences you have in working with people to create value, and working with customers to help them achieve their goals, and working with yourself to learn how to be more effective at what you do is actually the guaranteed value you get out of being an entrepreneur. And the cake is freaking awesome if you get to the end point. But just step back, we talk about, I've got a great idea, I want to bring it out to the market, I want to create value for my customers, I want to take this technology or this idea I've thought of and get it out in the world and make it a better place. The reality is, again, these things, when you start with, never ends up being where you end. You've heard of the concept of the pivot, right? In popular terminology, you think you're going to be one thing, but then you have to change and again and again and again. And you look at, again, every major startup that's been out there has gone through these transitions, these moments of looking in the mirror. The YouTube guys famously had the meeting about shutting down the site, right? And a few days before they got interest that changed everything for them. But they started as an online dating site. I forget what his name is. The Starbucks guy, Howard Schultz, wasn't about creating that third place for everybody to spend their time. He wanted to sell espresso machines, right? You get out in the market and it ends up being something else. And that in and of itself is pretty exciting. So, you look at, examples, this opportunity, I had to, think about, to share with you what my journey has meant to me and the kinds of things that I've seen. And I've got lots of friends who have done this very successfully, way more successfully than me, and a lot of people way smarter than those people who weren't successful at all. And what does this journey bring? For me personally, I signed my own paycheck when I was 24 years old. That was, the idea of, a very proud moment for me. I created something that generated revenue that allowed me to support myself and my family. I software engineer, PhD in computer science. What the heck, I love sales. I got out there in the world and I learned that engaging with customers and helping them achieve their goals by separating them from money was really, really fun. I also learned along the way that my academic training wasn't how I wanted to be spending my time. I love writing stuff, but I didn't like writing stuff. I wanted to be building things that were used out in the market, but I didn't want to write test scripts and actually make it, maintainable code. So I, built a team around me that did want to do that. I got pretty comfortable doing this. I'm an introvert. I don't, I won't make eye contact when we talk later on, but with this is fun. I like sharing my ideas. I love sharing my products, in this case, sharing the CFE with you guys. The feeling of helping another organization build success, it's like nothing else. I still remember the first time I went with my first company into our first non-test installation, somebody who had adopted our solution, and it's a room full of people using our software. Amazing, amazing feeling. This being an entrepreneur took me around the world, literally. I got to see and do things and interact with people that, never would have otherwise. I got, weirdly became somewhat of a people person, got, working with customers, working with teams, working with my colleagues. I started to learn how to help them be successful, figure out what they're good at, what help they need from me to do better. Somewhere along the way, people started believing that I actually knew some things about some things. I got invited to be on panels. I got invited to be on boards. Again, by putting myself out there, being, taking ownership of value creation, other things start to happen. And then your employees, again, this is independent of commercial success. This is independent of financial success. Seeing the people you work with build and grow and learn things that change their life path. Super exciting. I've had the great fortune to, count on my fingers and toes, and more than that, people who I worked with have gone on to found their own companies and start their journeys or kickstart their journeys. Become aware of what I'm good at and what I'm not, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then you get to the point where you've employed hundreds of people and you've paid lots of mortgages and help people achieve the stability where they can build a family and invest and create a trajectory. And this is all comes as a byproduct of raising your hand and saying, I'm going to go out and try to create value in the world. I'm going to work with my colleagues to go make something happen. This has nothing to do with the ROI for the customers. This is everything on interpersonal things that I accomplished for myself, my family, and with the people I worked on. The archetype of the entrepreneur from central casting is the glad-handing extrovert that's working the room. And there are some entrepreneurs who are dynamic, charismatic individuals who are extroverts and work a room. But not everybody comes to it from that path. We've got folks that were in office today who are entrepreneurs. They've known they're going to be an entrepreneur. They're juniors, seniors, freshmen, and that's their path, and they know what they want. And that is one path. But I'll position to you that is not the usual or not the majority. Many of us, including myself, became an entrepreneur because of circumstance, because of opportunity, right? And that there was a market opportunity that was compelling that I had to pursue. Entering grad school, in middle of grad school, undergrad, I was never going to take this path. But when I saw this opportunity, I couldn't not do it. Sorry for the double negative. I know several very, very successful entrepreneurs who fell into it. They're, through had to take over family businesses and took little businesses and turned them into multinational successes, right? And so if you think to yourself, well, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm interested, this is a good way to get an easy A and spend some time on Friday. You are, and you need to be entrepreneurial to navigate your way through life, whether you call yourself that or not. Engaging the world with this entrepreneurial mindset and looking at the world through the lens of value creation is going to serve you really, really well. The takeaways I have for you, and you'll see some of these concepts hopefully throughout the semester, and there's an amazing group of presenters we have for you. Things you need to think about to be successful, and in fact, this one is a guaranteed path to success. The first thing you need to do, and this is something I have talked to hundreds of thousands of people about literally, and the CEOs that I mentor today and the CEOs I've mentored over the past decades, it all starts with understanding who you are. And this is one of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur, is you have to be very honest with yourself about what you are capable of, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, who you need to surround yourself with to be successful, how you need to work to be successful. I mentioned earlier that I'm an introvert, which means I generally don't want to be working in large groups. I have sold tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of software. I've closed certainly tens of millions of dollars of software sales personally. And as an introvert, what I learned was I'm really good at working with people in small groups. So I constructed my sales engagements so I would get one-on-one time with the decision makers. Other people work great in groups. They want to get everybody in a room and get consensus. I'm going to work everybody individually and begrudgingly go to the group decision-making meeting, but I know what's going to happen because I've had the one-on-one meetings already, right? So playing to my strengths. As an introvert, I connect way better with individuals. That means I need to hire people around me who are complementary to me, who are great working with individuals, are more comfortable in situations with social ambiguity, and build things out that way. It's the hardest thing to do, to acknowledge that you're not good at something and that you need somebody else around you. And the greatest mistake of many entrepreneurs is hiring people they're comfortable with, that are similar to them, because you really need complementary skills if you're going to be successful. So start by knowing yourself. The second is being an entrepreneur, taking ownership of value creation, whether it's as a CEO or a project lead or a parent volunteer. It's lonely at the top. You need people around you who can tell you the time of day and be honest with you. Every story of success includes a group of people behind the scenes who are willing to spend time with that individual or that company and provide their expertise. I was very, very fortunate early in my career to have a couple of folks who would call me up and take me out to breakfast once a month and ask me the difficult questions and challenge me to push my boundaries and understand things I didn't understand. I think the single most accurate measure of success of an entrepreneur is the quality of mentors they have around them. And there's a lot of life lessons there too, but in the context of entrepreneurship, you have to have people around you who will help you get there. Who you can tell your honest truth, your insecurities, who can be candid about what you're missing in the picture. In my role here, right after I got here, I went out to the Valley and got to meet some really cool alums. And one of the gentlemen I met was one of Steve Jobs' founders from day one, and to hear his story of his interactions with Steve as they were going through the Apple trajectory, absolutely fascinating. You never hear this guy's name associated with Apple, but Steve Jobs wouldn't have been Steve Jobs without relationships like that. Yeah, there we go. Now this is especially for all of you high-achieving Wolverines. One of the challenges for all of you to date, your job was to do really well in everything you do, get your test scores, get your grades, and that is the path to success. Being a little hyperbolic here, but failure is fundamental to doing things out in the real world. It's the only way to learn. A friend of mine at Ross says, you can't learn how to ski without falling down. And if you are afraid of falling down and you never fall down, you're never going to ski successfully. And my point here is you need to embrace failure as part of the journey, and most importantly, you need to learn from failure as part of the journey. And I would argue, I've, as I mentioned before, I had great fortune to be successful early in my career, but the things I learned the most from were the two companies that turned into giant craters, meaning failures, lost all the money, everybody lost their job. And understanding what happened with that and what the dynamics with that were, and learning along the way. A really good friend of mine now, I hired to be my head of sales back in 2003, and we were on our way into a really important meeting with a multinational company that would have been our biggest customer if we closed the deal. And he said, "How you feeling going in?" And I said, "I feel great. I still want to hear no. All I want to do, I want to get to this meeting, I want to get yes." And he said, "No, Kurt, I want to hear no. I want to hear a lot of no in this meeting." And the point was, if you don't hear a negative, if you don't see something on the other side, you never know what you have. If you don't fall down skiing, you don't know you shouldn't push the corners that fast. If you don't hear no from your customer, you don't know what they don't want. Having a sequence of happy meetings with somebody and asking them to pay $1 million for your product is great, except if it was the case that that product was actually worth $10 million to them. So you need to be comfortable pushing and getting rejected and having to come back for another meeting with a different proposal. So you don't understand what you have until you've seen the other side, right? A little bit, extreme, but you need to, embrace this, and you will fail a lot, right? And that's part of the real world. Is you're never going to, you all got great test scores and great grades, and you're going to launch with a world-class education. You're going to fail at some stuff, and that's your greatest opportunity to get really good at the next thing. Next one is a little bit Zen, is that you need to simultaneously have the confidence to know you're going to change the world, to inspire you and your team and your partners to go out and do amazing things, while you have the humility to understand that what you think doesn't matter at all in reality. Is what matters is what your customer thinks. And again, one of the greatest downfalls of entrepreneurs I've known is not being able to listen to the reality the market didn't want exactly what they were selling, and continuing to persist with I have this idea, it's the greatest idea in the world, and they need to buy it the way I want them to buy it, or we're not going to make any changes. Where if you pivot the market and address it in a different way, we went to market in my first company with a solution that was based on some new technologies that we were sure were going to change the world. Fast forward 25 years, those technologies still haven't taken hold in the automotive industry, but we found some other stuff along the way that ended up, driving 8 figures of revenue and a really nice exit for everybody. So you need to, have the humility to understand it's the customer's opinion that matters, and it's this customer-first mentality, while, again, having the confidence to motivate yourself and motivate your team that you're going to make the progress you are going to change the world. The 5th of the 6 steps is get lucky. And you say, Kurt, well, you said it was a deterministic process for achieving success. How is luck part of being a deterministic process? Another reality is you look at every great success, they've had 1 or 2 or 4 or 6 near-death experiences along the way, and something happened in their favor that was beyond their control, and they took advantage of it. With me, with my first example of this was we had a major player in our market acquire a direct competitor of ours. And because of the dynamics in the market that resulted from that acquisition, all of a sudden we had suitors at our door because there was a market consolidation underway that we had no control over. We were in it, but because of that, we had a beautiful exit in 1998. But what we did do along the way, and the Michigan corollary, actually, we'll go back, come back to this. We created our own luck along the way, and this is what I call the theory of the Lees. The first being Stan Lee from Marvel fame, that if you want a superpower, make it luck, right? And the other being Bruce Lee, you have to make your own luck. And so the Jim Harbaugh version of that is this relentless pursuit of enthusiasm and value creation will position you to be successful. So what we did in my first company is we made our customers very, very happy. We ended up building a reputation in the market as a technology leader, as more importantly a wonderful provider of support for our customers, for them advancing their business objectives. And because of that, when the tides changed that we had nothing to do with in the market consolidation, we were all of a sudden an attractive acquisition target. So we were executing our model focused on creating value for our customers, and we ended up creating value for ourselves along the way. Last one, and we'll hear this over and over again, certainly if you hear me talk ever again, the only thing you can control along the way is your culture, who you hire and how you agree to work with each other, how you agree to engage the market. And that you can't control the market dynamics. You can't control, in my case, I brought probably the best technology I was ever a part of to market in the summer of 2008, which was the beginning of the greatest economic downturn in our generation. Can't control that, right? But what you can control to maximize your likelihood of success is who you work with, who you hire, and how you hold each other accountable and how you engage the world. Control those things, and that will maximize your likelihood for success. The other thing is what you focus on is entirely dependent on the stage of the organization you're at. Early stage company need to prove it can scale sales. It needs to prove that it can sell. Or a very early stage company doesn't need to prove it can sell. It needs to prove that you can make the product. Not even making it at scale. Again, these are all different iterations along the way, different priorities. You see a lot of folks wasting time and energy trying to do things that aren't mission critical to the organization right where it is right now. Your job as an entrepreneur is to move your project, move your company through the next stage, from proof of concept to proof of viability to proof of scale to proof of massive value for your shareholders. And all of those are different skills. All of those are different activities. And then to wrap this up, the reality is this isn't a path. It's a process. You need to be doing all these things at the same time, which again is why you need to have mentors to keep you focused on, no, now you need to be really cultivating that culture because you've lost control a little bit of that, or now you really need to be, engaging with that thing and pushing your barrier of not wanting to get out there and make those cold calls and work through those as you go. And again, a deterministic path to success, guaranteed path to success. You just told me, Kurt, that there's no guarantees in life. You can't control market dynamics. You yourself just told me you shut down a company and lost millions of dollars on it. I didn't tell you that part, but because of the economic downturn. But the reality is, along the way, I learned a tremendous amount. I am the person I am. My family is in the position it's in now. My colleagues who went with me on the journey have gone on to massive success or their own success in their journeys because we decided to raise our hand and pursue value together. And again, my point to you as Wolverines, we are compelled to lead. If you're not going to do it, who is? And the reality for you guys, again, is when I was here long time ago, you graduate with a Michigan degree and you go get a job for GM or GE or whoever, and you work there for 30 years and you retire, and there you go. You guys are going to change employers 5 or 10 times. You're going to change careers 3 or 4 times. And if you understand this mindset, if you understand how value is created, if you understand how you fit in the chain of creation of value, you're only going to be that much more successful. And the cake is freaking awesome when you get to the end.
All right. Thank you, Kurt. Okay. I want to pose to Kurt one question, which is he's managed a ton of teams and a lot of different dynamics. Talk to us about the 3 insights for managing culture that they need to be aware of if they're going to become a founder or even go into a company and be an innovative leader.
3?
Yeah, that's right. Raise your hand if you have a question.
Number 1, 2, and 3 is culture happens bottom up, not top down. I've as I mentioned before, I've done a couple of turnarounds and come into some pretty toxic situations. I also have, teams drift over time and employees come and go and the things change, but you can't push the culture onto an organization. You need to get the culture to embrace it themselves organically. Came into an amazing organization here, but still we did the same thing. We reset our culture and made this commitment to each other to work together with these 7, 8, or 9 principles you'll see posted on the wall right outside of our organization. Again, this is one of the challenges of working with people, and a bigger challenge of working with talented people is, they aren't going to take ownership because you tell them to take ownership. They need to take ownership because they believe. And the only way they believe is if they're part of the process. And so building a culture it is a relentless process. You need to be willing to get rid of people who don't buy into the culture. Nothing ruins an organization like a bad hire or somebody who is not, who's sowing discontent. There's famous stories of people getting fired because they wouldn't agree to sign some document aligning with the culture. That's a bit too far in my mind, but it's the people, and my background, again, I'm a technologist, the PhD in computer science, and when I started, it was all about the technology and how the technology is going to change the world, and then as I've evolved over 30 years, it's all about the people and how do you get smart people to align to do great things, and so that's again, it's got to come from them and be genuine from the heart.
You mentioned that there is no straight path to, succeeding in your business, and that you have to fail a lot, but still have confidence, in believing that you can succeed. But, in times of uncertainty and when things aren't going so great, how do you stay persistent? How do you constantly get back up and just, continue going on that path and believe in yourself?
That's an awesome question. So, a couple of things. is, you need to make sure you're grounding yourself in reality and use, actual data from the world versus projecting. Make sure you're not projecting on the information you have. That's a very inelegant way of saying is, look at the facts and understand where you really are. Emotionally, it feels horrible that you just lost that deal, or your colleague just decided they weren't going to continue with the project. But in terms of where you are as an organization and what you need to accomplish, culture and stage, et cetera, where are you really and what do you need to do next, with clear eyes. And that's a wonderful opportunity for you to consult your mentors and say, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what my customers are telling me, this is what my coworkers are telling me. And that's why, another reason why having mentors around you is invaluable. They can pick you up, right? And sometimes you have to pick up yourself. I mean, there are times in life where you've got to figure it out and stand up and go at it again. And part of knowing yourself is knowing what that means. Do you need to take a weekend off? Do you need to go for a trip? Do you need to go out with your friends and have a big weekend? There's a lot of different ways to do that. But get that perspective, make sure it's grounded in reality, and lean on those people around you who can show you a mirror and help you get to the next step.
Love it. Perfect. We got one more down here.
Hi, Kurt. Thank you so much for the wonderful talk. So my name is Kai. I'm a PhD student in CSE department, also focusing on AI. So we
Awesome.
Yeah. So coming from
Guaranteed success. It's all of us, every one of us just went on it.
Yeah. So coming from a very similar background as yours, and I find your talk very inspiring, which opened a new perspective on entrepreneurship. And I just have a quick question about what do you think about how does a PhD degree help you succeed in entrepreneurship, and then also at what aspect do you think a PhD degree prevents you from succeeding in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then my last question is, sorry for having so much questions.
So many questions.
Yeah, my last question is what are some concrete steps you suggest people in their young 20s can take to get started on entrepreneurship?
Right. Great questions. A couple of things, and I'm going to be, you're going to get sick of me saying this. It goes back to understanding yourself and what your strengths are, and the fact that you'll have a PhD from this esteemed university in one of the hottest academic areas right now is a strength that you can have as you've proven technical mastery over something. And what that can do, and the way that I rationalized to myself was, I don't need anybody to tell me what to do with the technology because I've done this already, and I have the credibility to lead a complex project to completion. And so for my investors and partners, I use the PhD as credibility. Nothing, and we can joke about how credible a PhD is, and in some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. But in your case, in what I did, you lean into it because it's something I have that distinguishes me from the other people they're talking to. The other side of that is you need to prove, go into stereotypes and prove that you can work with people and prove that you can talk with your customers in language that they understand and engage the market where it is. And that's, the academic bias is that you're working at a level that isn't connected with, the real problems your customers have. And so that's the other thing to bias. And then the last bit was what action do you take now to get out there in the world? It's entrepreneurship is, it's funny to me, and I'm, I always made this joke too, is how do you teach entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship is about doing. Right, and the way you learn so much of this is by getting out there and trying things. Our aspiration is to give you a framework and a way to think so that you can learn from our mistakes and learn some ideas of how to engage the world, but nothing beats experience. And so get out there and go to the local meetups, talk to the local startups, talk to people who have done it before, offer to be an intern or spend some time helping somebody develop an idea, but get out there in the world and do something.
All right, to that notion of doing it, we have plenty more questions. I see a lot of hands up. If you have those, you're always welcome to come up to the stage and ask the speaker, but unfortunately, it's that magic bewitching hour and class is now over. Thank you so much. Have a great time. See you next week.